And during these 2 weeks, we just try to distribute flyers and invite people to join as much as we can on the Facebook, but not very publicly in the street because, it's dangerous here.
But unlike Tunisia, only 20% of Egyptians had access to the internet. The activists needed to reach out to the many Cairenes who were not online. They hatched a plan to send a viral message through the arteries of the city by taxi.
Here in Cairo, taxi drivers love to talk to people, so we said to ourselves, how can we take advantage of that?
Activist Walid Rashid and his friends now drew Cairo's talkative taxi drivers into their plans.
The idea was that if we spoke directly, face-to-face with a taxi driver, he might start arguing and debating with us, and this would not be very useful. But if I speak with someone from my movement using the phone in front of the taxi driver, he will feel he has overheard a secret, and that will create some intrigue. And then the taxi driver is bound to pass on what I've said to others about our plans for the 25th.
Word spread through Cairo on buses, in cafes and in mosques that something big would happen in Tahrir Square on the 25th. 1 week before the planned protest, activist Asma Mahfouz took a brave decision. She decided to stop hiding her identity online.
I felt maybe if people could see me, then I could communicate what I feel better face-to-face than in writing. And so the plea came straight from my heart and touched people directly. My words were completely spontaneous.
Asma's courage in risking arrest and abuse from the security services rallied people to her support.
People called me saying, the security services won't arrest you. If they do, we'll set fire to them. We'll protect you. Don't be scared. We'll join you on the 25th.
The activists knew the authorities were watching their every move and that their online conversations were monitored. They decided to use this to their advantage.
Whatever messages we send, we know that they're going to the police. So our main tactic was to announce the decoy areas. The more areas that we announced, we thought that the more distributed the riot police would be.
So you were trying to trick the police to be in the wrong places?
Yeah, wrong places, and not even the wrong places, but try to trick them away from the big crowd.
We named many of the famous squares in Cairo. We wanted to send the police off in different directions.
On the morning of the 25th, the organisers headed to Tahrir Square, not knowing what they would find.
As soon as we arrived, we saw a huge number of people and we'd all thought that we'd gone there alone.
Word of mouth had brought Cairenes from all over the city onto the street.
We were shocked when we saw the huge numbers of people with us. We were so happy we were crying because finally people had been inspired to join us.
Is this a fact or a dream? 40,000 Egyptians right now in Tahrir Square. I can't believe that.
All my friends from our movement were there, and other movements. Young men and women. We were all crying. Success, our dream is coming true.
Although the Muslim Brotherhood had not officially supported the protests, many young people from the organisation were now throwing in their lot with the protesters.
We didn't raise any brotherhood banners or brotherhood slogans that are usually raised in other brotherhood protests, because the uprising was meant to be an Egyptian uprising, not an Islamic uprising.
It was a peaceful demonstration, but the regime was rattled. Riot police were sent in to break up the crowds, but the protesters stood their ground.
Get out! Get out!
As darkness fell, the police escalated their assault on the crowd with water cannon and tear gas.
There was terrible violence committed by the security forces on the 25th during the night. But the surprise was that people didn't go. People stayed with us all night. There were demonstrations in the streets and alleys, and the security forces were chasing us everywhere.
It wasn't until dawn that the police finally succeeded in clearing the square. But with the Tunisian revolution fresh in their minds, politicians in and beyond Egypt waited nervously for the next move. The West relied on Mubarak to uphold peace with Israel and for his cooperation in the war on terror. Like his predecessors in the White House, Barack Obama had no wish to alienate him.
Obama's administration was one of the most supportive of the Mubarak regime, more than the Bush administration. Obama gave strong support to many institutions linked to the government, and he spoke about Mubarak as a man of peace, a man of democracy. His stand on Mubarak made the people of Egypt angry.
How the United States responded would be critical. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had been a champion of internet freedom, encouraging digital activism around the world. But now that US interests were at stake, she reverted to old-style realpolitik.
Our assessment is that the Egyptian government is stable and is looking for ways to respond to the legitimate needs and interests of the Egyptian people.
But in struggling to read the situation in Egypt, America had got it wrong.
The nation that claimed to be the world's biggest supporter of democracy had instead focused on its own pragmatic interests and failed the first big test of the Arab Spring.
In Cairo, the young people who hungered for democracy reacted with dismay.
Before the 25th, we felt Obama was the most important person in the world. But as soon as Hillary said, "This is a solid regime and we have faith in it," we decided that America didn't exist. We felt contempt for Obama.
The activists now planned a bigger, bolder act of defiance against their president. They would occupy Tahrir Square. But to do this, they would have to confront the riot police stationed throughout the city. Their plan was scheduled for Friday, January the 28th. The night before, the organizers met in a secret location.
We had a big map of Cairo on how we will attack the riot police and conquer Tahrir Square once more. And in that meeting, in that very tense meeting, we felt that if we got caught, we will all be sentenced to death.
The activists may not have had the support of democratic governments in the West, but they did have support from a global online network, including the revolutionaries in Tunisia.
Advice from the Tunisians was exhaust them, stay up all night, run and then regroup, run and then regroup, and they'll get tired.
They told us what's best to do, how to fight the tear gas. For example, using vinegar and using lemon juice on the masks.
But while the activists planned, the authorities prepared what they hoped would be a mortal blow.
Over the last few days, the regime had watched how activists had used the internet and mobile phones to help them get tens of thousands of people onto the streets. The government's reaction was simple. It switched off the entire network, severing all online and mobile communications.
British-based Vodafone was one of the 4 internet service providers which withdrew its service, stating that under Egyptian law, the authorities had the right to issue such an order and that they were obliged to comply. On the morning of Friday, the 28th of January, the day planned for the protests, Egyptians woke up to find they'd been cut off from the rest of the world and from each other. But the activists already had their plan, and technology was no part of it. Their strategy now was to tap into the rage of Cairo's poor, who for years had borne the brunt of the corruption and violence of the regime. They headed to a poor suburb of Cairo, Imbaba.
Imbaba is a world away from the middle-class Cairo of bloggers and internet activists. This is a tough neighborhood where many people struggle to feed their families, and few would have much knowledge of Facebook or Twitter. But revolutions cannot be made on the internet alone. They need people, thousands of people out on the streets in protest. Imbaba was the perfect recruiting ground.
As soon as the activists arrived at Imbaba, it was clear that Mubarak's ploy to cut off the internet and mobile phone network had played into their hands.
People no longer had any idea what was happening, so they said, I don't have internet access, I don't have a phone, I don't have any news, so I will go out and see what's happening. Millions went out, and this is what we wanted, that people should go out on the streets.
We started gathering people, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, from all around Imbaba, and they started chanting slogans about the regime.
وفي ناس عندها 30 سنة و35 سنة لحد دلوقتي ما اتجوزتش. اعتراض على نظام الحكم، اعتراض على العيشة اللي عايشينها، اعتراض على كل حاجة. الهدف بتاع تشريع التحرير ان انا ارجو الدستور الجديد.
وتحركنا من امبابة. We left Imbaba with about 30 to 40,000 protesters.
We came out of Imbaba with 100,000, and when I saw the numbers on that day, I figured out that the regime will be there.
From every neighborhood in Cairo, everyone was marching in their tens of thousands to Tahrir Square.
But to get to the square, the protesters would first have to cross the Nile, and there was just one main route.
They set off on foot and came here to the Qasr al-Nil bridge across the Nile, which leads to Tahrir Square. Waiting for them on the other side were the riot police, with strict orders to stop the protests taking place.
And in Mubarak's Egypt, that meant, if necessary, killing them.
The fear was real, because they had weapons and they were shooting. I mean, it was shoot to kill. They were shooting like this.
It's a narrow bridge, not a very big one, and it's difficult to cross the bridge with, an army of riot police standing in front of you, just through a narrow path. So it's very easy for them to hit you.
The security forces finally sensed our power, and we sensed our own power. It was either us or them.
A lot of people died there, and 2 of them died in front of my eyes. I tried to save them, but even though I'm a doctor, but there wasn't much to do. To see someone who dies in front of you and you feel that you are the one responsible for getting him down.